Hello, welcome. My name is Joel Frieders. I am the Strategic Partnerships Director at Hope for the Day. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Chicago, Illinois. We work in mental health education as a form of suicide prevention, and I'm super honored to be here with three of my favorite people on the planet to talk about a project that we started that launched back in February titled Things We Don't Say, Craft Beer for Mental Health, which is our attempt at getting the craft beer industry and those who are inside of it as employees and owners and brewers and all that, all the way down to the consumers and those who are simply fans of the industry, to kind of take stock of their own relationship with alcohol and make sure that they understand who to contact and where to go for those contacts to find legitimate mental health resources when they're in a moment of crisis and or for a long-term healing and maintenance to take care of themselves. I'm going to very quickly introduce my friends here, and then we're going to jump right into it because we don't need any slides. We're just going to straight up start talking about this project. So to my left, actually, no, to my right on my video screen is my friend Mike Willaford from Whiskers Brewing in St. Paul. Say hi, Mike. Underneath him is Jacqui Garman from Hidden Springs Ale Works down in Florida. And to her left on my screen is my friend Tom from WellBeing Brewing Company in St. Louis. Throughout the course of this particular discussion, what we're going to be working on is kind of hitting some talking points that we have all amongst ourselves discussed, but in a hope of making people understand that talking about mental health in the craft beer industry and with a beer in your hand is not only acceptable, but it's something that we have to strive to do, even if it's uncomfortable. So before we get any further, I've already kind of given my very quick and dirty introduction, but I want to my first question for each of you, and we're going to start with Mike, then go to Jacqui, then go to Tom, is number one, who are you and why are you involved? And then number two, why is this important?
I'm Mike Willaford. I'm the head brewer of Whiskers Brewing Company. Why I'm involved is because it was a few months ago that Joel and I were in this exact same situation talking about mental health, and we became instant lifelong friends. And this is important to me because as you'll see here in the next coming days through our social feeds, I'm going to be sharing a very important and personal video about how craft beer in the industry almost killed me. I tried to take my life because of this thing. And I'm here today because people helped me out and listened and caught me in the darkest moment and helped me out of it. And I want to make sure that we can bring that conversation to the table. It's never really happened in this industry, and I for one want to advocate to get this to be normal again, or for the first time, actually, to correct myself.
All right, Jacqui, please.
Hi, I'm Jacqui Garman, and I am co-founder and owner of Hidden Springs Ale Works. I want to say, it's funny, I actually have a private practice, so I'm a psychotherapist in addition to running operations with my husband at Hidden Springs Ale Works. And a few years ago, just being in the industry, we started in 2015. There was just a lot of observations that created a lot of cognitive dissonance, I think, for me personally, and just sort of my observations about, just some of the culture that exists in craft beer. And then the lack of really talking about sort of the elephant in the room, or what we refer to as the bear in the room, related to our mental wellness, and knowing that we have alcohol right there in front of us, and recognizing that, it really is about kind of getting in touch, like I think what you said at the beginning, Joel, about our own and discovering our own relationship with alcohol. What is it about, alcohol for us? Not what everyone else is doing per se, but what am I doing with alcohol? What is my relationship? So when this project came about, we were really excited because, again, it's been something that has been sort of a passion project for me personally, and really getting the awareness out and getting to a place of what you might also touch on about that normalization, about being able to talk about mental wellness, because it is one of those things that we don't talk about because maybe it's not something that we can see. We can't see a person, struggling on the inside. We can see their broken body parts, if they've tripped and fallen, but we can't really see the hurt that's inside of them. And so it's really what made us say we're on board and we want to be a part of this project to talk about mental wellness.
Thank you. Tom.
All right, and I'm Tom Halaska. I'm with WellBeing Brewing Company based in St. Louis, Missouri. We are one of the country's first craft non-alcoholic brew companies. Why I'm doing this is what I've been doing for the past 3 years, trying to have this conversation, trying to normalize the discussion of mental health within inside of our industry, not just the craft beer industry, but the restaurant industry and really anybody who works in producing, selling alcohol, and for a long time, I really felt like I was on an island by myself, trying to get people to just kind of take an inventory on their relationship with alcohol and just be more mindful about how they're consuming alcohol. And when this program was presented to me, I'm like, wow, this is a great way to get people to understand that we need to have this conversation. And, the world that I deal with is a lot of people that are in recovery, and people that are in recovery sometimes have a very black and white view on how conversations need to happen or how people need to behave during these conversations. And I've kind of thrown all that out of the window and said, hey, man, we need to have these conversations, and alcohol most of the time isn't the problem. It's all of the underlying issues that are the problem, and alcohol is just kind of the catalyst for the escape or the numbness or whatever it is. So let's start having these conversations and let's start doing that. And this program fits right inside that.
Well said. And if nobody can tell, whenever Tom talks, I kind of do one of these because in my internal monologue, I have Tom's voice. So I know that I don't sound like him at all, but thanks, man. So what I've done over the past few weeks since we've started this project is I've kind of taken stock of the negative responses that we've received for simply talking about our mental health with a beer in our hand. And I know that all of us have our own relationships with alcohol. I know that I kind of set myself up to enjoy Friday and Saturday and a portion of Sunday, and I legitimately map out the beers that I'm going to enjoy because I'm a fanboy, not just of the industry itself, but the art that goes into the labels, how these beers are kind of concocted. If you've ever listened or watched the Tin Whiskers Instagram feed, you will see a lot of really ridiculous ideas going into beers. And I appreciate that. It's not always something I'm going to be drinking, but I like the creativity. I actually enjoy the fanboy mentality of jumping on the craze train because, yeah, I'll take a sip and, I don't want to drink that ever again. But there's things that I enjoy about the industry that have nothing to do with these negative responses that we are seeing in a lot of the participating breweries' social feeds. But what I wanted to do is kind of go through a list of why we're going to be talking about this. And I'm going to give a couple sentences, and then I'm going to pass it over to Mike, and we'll keep that thing up where he goes, Mike, Jacqui, Tom, back to me, and I'll start us over again. I don't think that my opinion on this project in this regard is important because that's why I brought 3 of my friends that I trust to give us their professional opinions as to why these sentences that I'm going to speak are actually part of our why. So if that makes sense, I'm going to go ahead and read the first one, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mike to simply respond. And if you have nothing to add, no pressure. No, there's no peer pressure here, y'all. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the list. So here we go. Number 1, alcohol is not always the enemy. Those who misuse alcohol often do that because of poor mental health, period.
I don't think alcohol is the enemy. And I think, we all have to keep in mind that our choices are our choices. It doesn't, like, sobriety works for some people, and that's awesome. And if you have to take that route, awesome for you. But some of us can have beers. We can have a couple of drinks, and it's not an issue. This is where I guess it gets tough because I feel like I've felt over the past couple of weeks that I can't talk about this because I make alcohol. Some people have made me feel that way through comments. We're not here to be the enemy. We're here to make beers, make a living, support families. And I wish sometimes people would see that.
Oh, so for me to follow up on that, I would say, alcohol isn't the enemy. I think it's about education and, again, learning what alcohol is for you. So how we would phrase that is self-awareness, like becoming self-aware of why I use alcohol. Sure, alcohol is misused at times. But it doesn't necessarily mean that an individual has a definitive poor mental health. They just happen to have some poor coping skills that could be improved upon. And I agree, with Mike, and I had mentioned in a conversation that, we're kind of moving away from this model of like this black and white thinking when it comes to treatment of alcohol and substance use. So for some people, if being completely abstinent works for them, great. But if moderation works and you find other ways to cope in a healthy way, and not use alcohol to be that coping mechanism, then I think it isn't the enemy. It's, how we use it is what that's about, I think, for me.
I wouldn't be here if alcohol was the enemy. If alcohol was the enemy, I wouldn't be participating in this conversation. And I think that is as simple as I can get with this. Now, can it be the enemy? Sure. So can sobriety. It's not always, butterflies and rainbows, trudging through the path of not drinking alcohol. And I think figuring out a way to help people, I think the word mocktail is antiquated. I think the word sobriety is antiquated. Am I sober? No, I don't consume alcohol. I don't consume alcohol because I cannot consume alcohol personally. Am I against alcohol? No. If I was against alcohol, I wouldn't be here. And I think that, being able to have the right ways and the right tools and for people, like I said, to be able to take an inventory about what their relationship with alcohol looks like. Are they dependent? Are they fine? Is everything great? Good. Fantastic. But we all know that there are people struggling out there. And for us to be able to cut that line and say alcohol is the enemy, end of conversation, then we don't get to have any kind of conversation. So I'm here because alcohol is not the enemy.
Well put. I think your summary of if we're just simply not going to talk about it kind of alludes to the fact that if we keep not talking about things, those things will continue to exist. I know me personally, I take personal offense when I find out that people that are involved in the craft beer industry and pretty much any industry out there feel that their only option is suicide. You'll see that my shirt actually says talk about suicide. The majority of the things that I wear and talk about are all focused on the fact that I'm still dealing with the loss of my friend Mike from 2017. He drank alcohol. Alcohol was not the thing that finally convinced him that his only opportunity to feel any semblance of grace or peace was suicide. But I still think about every freaking day, what could I have done differently? Well, going forward, I'm not going to allow an elephant in the room to stop me from talking about the freaking elephant in the room. Notice I did not say the F word. Very proud of myself right there. Second sentence, our goal is to meet people where they're at, not where we expect them to be. So if our people are at the bar, we need to be there. Discuss. Mike?
Yeah, I had written some things out, and one of the things I thought, and I think I said this to you a couple of days ago on the phone, Joel. If Sierra Nevada didn't propose resilience, would you guys have donated to the California wildfires? If Weathered Souls didn't start Black is Beautiful, would you have donated to Black charities or Black businesses? Sometimes brewing a beer about it is what we can do because that's what we do. We make beer for a living, and so the only way we can get the mass public's attention is putting a beer in their hands. It's wild to me that like this conversation seemed to be so heated. Like I literally have a can of it right here. This is probably the most beautiful thing I've done in my career, and I've done a lot of cool things. My hope out of all this is I can put this beer in someone's hand and they look at it and go, oh, what's this about? And it stimulates that one conversation. Again, if we didn't make a beer about it, would you listen? If we just posted on Instagram, would you pop a like on it and move on? Like, so we do have to meet people at the bar. We need to meet people at the liquor store. We got to meet people where they're at, because otherwise I don't feel like anybody would really listen to us.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think when in therapy, we talk about meeting our clients or patients where they're at, not where I think they should be. And I think when it comes to this conversation about mental health, it's in our bars, it's in our communities. We have the audience. And I think to some degree we have a social responsibility to our community to be able to get the word out and to use that as a platform. Big Beer uses it. They talk about drink responsibly. So why wouldn't we do that in craft beer? But I think we can take it to another level where we're not just talking about being responsible, but we're talking about, while we're responsible, how are we coping with those everyday stressors that we deal with? And how can we meet the needs of not just the outside community, but the craft beer community that we're so close with. So that's what I would say about meeting the people where they are. Start at the bars if that's where they're at, for sure.
And that's kind of saying that what we're doing is responsibility is more than just a statement. It's great that you put that tagline on the bottom of every ad that you have, but you're doing that for legal reasons. You're not doing that because you really believe in responsibility. You're doing that because you have to. We don't have to do this. No one who is participating in this program has to be doing what they're doing right now. I walked into a brewery on Friday, and as a person who doesn't consume alcohol, yes, I do go to breweries. I like to hang out with people. I like to go where people are. And I walked into a brewery, and a guy saw my logo on my hoodie and was like, "Man, I saw the article, Sauce Magazine, about what you guys are doing, man. It brought a tear to my eye. Like, I worked in the brew industry forever, and like, this really means a lot." The next step from him saying that was me sitting down next to him, ordering a beer, one of my beers, sitting down and having a conversation with him. So success, an absolute success. Now, he didn't have 4 beers, 3 shots of whiskey, and go smoke a joint outside, because that we all know how to responsibly have these conversations. We've all, tried to solve the world's problems until 3 o'clock in the morning after consuming too much alcohol. This isn't about that. This is about sitting down and having a conversation about mental health. And it's already happened. And since it's already happened, that makes this program an absolute success.
Word up. That's my official response. Word up. Next sentence. If stigma keeps us quiet and we know that the most uncomfortable person in the room or on the internet holds the power, we're never going to start the conversation and things will continue to stay the same.
Yeah. And the problem is that then you have the people who are brewing the beers that are your favorite beers and, all that, who stay quiet in the brewery. They quit their job because they feel like their employer or their coworkers don't get them. They get fired because they have a bad day and it causes them to react in a certain way. The hurt continues. It's one thing for me to talk about brewers and everything because that's who I'm around all the time. But this goes to the bartenders. This goes to the cooks. If you have a kitchen, there's so many people employed in this industry or connected to this industry, and it's like milkshake IPAs, man. Like, people clamored loudly for them until they realized like maybe this wasn't the right idea. And so it's hard when the uncomfortable people on the internet come after you. Trust me, I've had a couple of days of that. And I don't know how to respond. And all it does is I don't think they see that it puts my mental health in a really, really bad spot. Texting friends at 11 o'clock at night, just really hurt by all this. So I think that's all. This is one where I guess I'm going to bow out because I'm just so bewildered by some of the response that I've gotten over the last couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Joel, I think we talked a little bit about, like, a lot of times when we look at people's responses, it's really a reflection of their own self and where they're at on the journey. It's unfortunate that it ends up being projected onto the people who are like, I'm standing here in the arena and I'm ready to talk about it. But, from a stigma perspective, I think that's probably been the hardest part, is to be able to kind of step away and become initially what comes across as sort of the outlier. And then you begin to realize, wait a minute, they want to talk about it. And then you start meeting other people who want to talk about it. And keeping your eye and focus on, what's really important here, that people are going to have things to say. And it's really obviously regrettable that in a place where we should be talking about it, that people have negative stuff to say about it. I think we do have this power that regardless of what they have to say, we get to join forces together and stand up for something that's really important to us. And I think for me personally, I haven't actually seen any comments come up. My social media content creator hasn't said anything. And I do need to check in with her as we start dropping more stuff to see what comes of all of that. But we're prepared for it because we know that is part of sort of, what happens when you stand up for something that, we're standing up for people that aren't there yet. And I'm okay with that. I think our company's okay with being a voice for people that just aren't quite there and taking the heat if we need to, because, we've gotten to that place where we're ready.
Man, Mike, I feel you. Like I can see the frustration. I can hear it, through the computer. The people that are saying those things are the reason why we're here. It's easier for me because I've dealt with this for 3 years, man. I've been the craft non-alcoholic beer guy. Try going to a beer festival and halfway through, why would you take the alcohol out of beer? Why would you do that? That's stupid. Doesn't make sense. I only drink beer to get drunk. Why would you do that? And my response a lot of those times was, man, we made this beer for you. This is, you need this, you need to mix this into your session. You need to be a little bit more mindful. The people who are acting out mostly because they are the ones that need to have this conversation. And the only way for them to engage is to put up their defenses. And that's okay. And we're going to be the ones that are going to have to take those punches. We're going to have to. Mm-hmm. We stepped into this ring, and that's what that ring looks like. There's going to be people who are upset, people who don't know how to express that, man, this is a really good idea. I belong here. I need this, but they can't break down those barriers yet. And I think that this program is what's going to help break down those barriers. Every single Facebook ad that we put online, there's someone who says something negative about having a non-alcoholic beer in existence. You compound that with now talking about mental health in the craft beer community with an alcoholic beer. People are going to feel threatened, and there's a reason why they're feeling threatened, and that's okay for them to feel threatened. And I think those are the people we need to just wrap our arms around and say, man, we got you. We're good. I hear what you're saying, but we're here for you regardless. So, Mike, good man, way to stick it out. I'm proud of you. It's tough, but it's awesome.
Wow. All right. Sorry. If we aren't aware, this is rough. Inspiring, but rough. If you aren't aware, this guy Mike is one of my friends, and he's been like hit with the woke stick of people who have no idea what the hell woke means, and it's taking its toll on not only Mike and the people at Tin Whiskers, but I will tell you that my team at Hope for the Day is been through the ringer trying to make people understand that you can have an opinion, you can have a thought. But when it starts trying to vilify an entire idea to simply get people to talk about their own mental health and to make access to mental health resources easier and to make stigmas simply go the hell away if we talk about them more, normalizing the conversation. If your response is to vilify the person who is trying to do something to improve the world around them, it hurts. So I feel that super hard. All right, here we go. Next sentence. If we aren't aware of when and why we drink alcohol, we need to reframe our relationship with it. It's uncomfortable to talk about, but we need to prioritize taking personal responsibility for our own actions, and that includes alcohol consumption. Mr. Mike.
Yeah, this is all about personal. It's about you. I guess I'm a person of like, we all have a different chemical makeup, so this affects us all differently. I think there's not a single person in this industry who hasn't at one point in time overconsumed, whether it's your first beer fest or it's your opening day or it's your first time out with a bunch of brewers. And it's a personal thing, but it's also, I think that there's an accountability and I speak for the brew house. There's accountability back in the brew house to knock things off. Like I've heard it said for years, if you can't be a brewer, if you can't come in hungover. No, you shouldn't be a brewer if that's all you ever do is come in hungover. We use dangerous equipment, we use dangerous chemicals. It's not a safe environment. So that's not the answer. but it's often commonly the mentality is go out and party, hit hard, go back in the brew house, suck it up, sweat it out during your mash, and you'll be fine by noon. And that's why I've tried very hard over the last several years to just try to set an example of, at the very least, like, on a Friday, that's when I'll maybe have a beer with my guys and just grab a 10-ounce pour, have a quick chat. Pandemic helped with that because we were getting out of work pretty quick, not hanging around having beers, but it's one of those, choose to be the example, but also realize that, again, I think this has been repeated several times, your path isn't somebody else's. And so what works for you may not work for somebody else. But we can support each other in those decisions as long as they're not like detrimental to health and safety.
Yeah, health and safety for sure. And I liked what you said, actually, Mike, when you were talking about setting an example. First of all, I'll be the first to admit, yes, I've over-invited at 1 or 2 festivals in my time. You're not alone in that. I think we've all been there. But I think in that moment, we have a choice after we've done that, right? To decide, like, well, what was that about? What was my relationship with alcohol during that time period? But what I'll say is, being in a leadership role, it is very important for me personally to set an example to our team, and to have the relationship with alcohol that hopefully sends a message that people aren't looking at me and wondering what's going on with her. So I think for me, I just think personally, being in the ownership position, I realize that huge responsibility of having to have a relationship with alcohol that isn't about over inviting, but likewise, I don't sit back and judge those people because of where they're at and the journey that they're on of self-discovery. What I get to do from an operational perspective, though, is to look at the company and, discover ways that can help, bolster and foster a safer environment, and educate people on, good practices when they're engaging and drinking, for example, like not drinking and driving, using Uber, that sort of stuff. So as far as like reframing our relationship with it, that definitely comes once we become aware about that relationship. And it can take some time, I think, for us. And maybe it takes a couple of times where we wake up and we're really hungover and we're not happy with that feeling, and we start to really come to terms with what that's about for us. But I think we've said this quite a bit, but it really is about a person's own personal journey and where they're at. But when we're in leadership roles, I think we have that ability to really like set the bar for the people that we're leading, to be able to show them the different types of relationships that we can have with alcohol that are healthier.
So what are we saying? Are we saying here that if you don't know about your relationship from alcohol, you shouldn't drink? Is that kind of what the statement is saying? Like, is that, no, right? It is, 4 years ago, I couldn't have strung 5 days together without drinking. Would have been impossible. Now it's 1,300 days. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter anymore, because my journey kind of took me there and got me there, and I don't know what my relationship with alcohol was like 4 years ago. It's hard for me to even kind of wrap my head around what that looks like. And I think that just being honest with yourself and being able to, the brewing community as a whole, if someone decides not to drink, we've got to stand right next to them and be like, cool. Even if they're just not drinking for today, or maybe if they're just not drinking for that round, or if they're just not drinking shots, or if they're not just whatever it is, like we just need to, it's, that playing hurt, man, 20 something years in the restaurant business, it was almost a qualification to play hurt, to come in and work through the hangover and work through the pain as that badge of honor. And it's just not cool. You smell bad. Your productivity is down. There's nothing about it that says you're awesome. And I think removing that particular stigma and being able to have someone say, "Yeah, I'm good for the night. I'm done." Okay, cool. You want something else? What do you want? I want to share a drink with you. I want to share a treat with you. Doesn't matter if there's alcohol in it or not. I just want to have that experience. So I think breaking down those barriers of that whole playing hurt thing, man, it absolutely drives me crazy. Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone. And as I'm kind of going through our list of why, we haven't really touched on mental health outside of the impact of alcohol on it. And I think I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact that this program exists. Things We Don't Say is actually the title of our clinically backed mental health education curriculum that we deliver everywhere that we have the opportunity. And something that we wanted to do with this particular project wasn't just to have a delicious beer that has mental health resources on it that points to an overarching umbrella of people who care. We wanted to get people educated on their mental health. And that's something where Hope for the Day, that's kind of why I even know that Hope for the Day exists, is because I was educated. I learned that I don't have to assume that simply because I'm a certain way right now, or I feel a certain way right now, that that's going to be freaking permanent. I learned very early on in my own mental health voyage, after the loss of my friend Mike Malinowski to suicide in 2017, that if I never actually talk about the things that bother me, essentially they start to compound and they get worse. And if I don't get the things off my chest and I experience the next day and more things get, piled on top of my back and my chest, well, you don't make things right by simply swallowing them. And that's also true with alcohol. So we don't want to make it seem like the only reason this beer exists is to talk about alcoholism or overconsumption. That's just another facet of the overall conversation about mental health. And it's inspiring to me to hear people in different parts of their journey, as Jacqui has got me saying it now. Thank you for adding that terminology into my brain. But now that I'm meeting people at their different points, like we have people who like their first craft beer was a hazy. And I'm like, wait, what are you, 22? And it's interesting to see people all along their different path, all along their different appreciation for not only craft beer, but the craft beer community. It's inspiring to me to see people understand why they care. And it's not always because it's a delicious beer and, it might give me a buzz. It's because the people in the craft beer industry are some of the most supportive and the most community-oriented people I've ever met. And if you ask anybody at any brewery anywhere, and I know that Mike and Jacqui can confirm this, if something goes wrong on a specific day, whether it's brew related or facilities related, the first person you call is not a vendor or a repairman. The first person you call is 9 times out of 10 is another brewery. And that other brewery will actually stop what they are doing and help you fix your stuff, because that's what breweries do, is they support other breweries. You'll see collaboration beers that you would never have imagined come out of the industry simply because they want to hang out with each other. And what are they doing when they hang out? They're talking about the beers. They're talking about the business. But what we're trying to do is to be able to shift and make more approachable the conversation on each individual person within the industry's mental health. But then also be sure that we have those people that are simply consumers in the craft beer community. They're just as important to the community, because if they weren't there to drink the Imperial Cupcake, Gummy Bear, Gummy Worm, Oreo cookie double dipped in a homemade batch of marshmallow Imperial Sour Stout, why would we actually be here in the first place? So I just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry for the aside. All right, next and last sentence in our on our why segment before we start actually talking about stigmas, and we're gonna have to pick up the pace a little bit here. But here's the last why. It is not unusual for someone in the alcohol industry to drink alone, drink every day, or drink in a binge type fashion. And the warning signs for quote unquote veteran drinkers are much harder to spot until those people are really in trouble.
It's not uncommon. You think about, you got a bar next to your work or in your work, it's and half the time, the pints are free. And so it's not uncommon to see industry folk drink every day. It's not uncommon to see those, like you call it, the veteran drinkers, who they are hard to pick out because they have learned over the years to hide it. And that's, I've seen it down to guys that go into like sub bar areas and you see them on the security cameras pounding beers because they don't want to get caught, but they need a drink. And you wonder how do you approach it? And I mean, one of the ways I guess I've learned is in the past is sometimes you just gotta, if you have these blunt conversations and it's a kind of a broy environment back in the brew house, then utilize that to your advantage. call somebody out straight up, catch them, and say, what the hell, man? Like, you can stop bad activity. You can catch somebody who wouldn't ever say anything. Again, that goes to the name of this whole project. They won't say anything on their own until they're caught or it's brought up. And so it's this unfortunate thing that it is this commonplace thing, and that this is how the alcohol industry kind of has been. But to some of the points we've made, it doesn't have to be that. Shoot, I wish I could sell Tom's beer in my brewery, because we have dumb laws, so I can't. Because my NA options are like Coca-Cola and LaCroix and stuff, and people come in and that's not what they want. Or brewers, they don't want to have their 30th glass of water for the day, and so they're like, well, I'll just have a beer. I'm only doing this process. So it's finding ways to normalize not having a beer before you leave work. Don't have that shifty. You see it all the time. You see posts all the time. Shifties. Like, that's not a must. Like, low fills aren't a must. You don't have to take them. Like, because then all you do is you take a bunch of low fill beers home and then you slam them, because otherwise they're going to be bad in 3 days. And then you've increased your pace. Sometimes you don't have to fill your fridge with beer. You don't have to be that person. If anything, please, if I say anything, just please know that you don't have to be that person. Like, you don't have to fill up the fridge. You don't have to drink the low fills. You don't have to take your shifty.
So I want to talk a little bit about the binge type stuff. And the reason being, I think that's oftentimes the thing that's really overlooked. You were actually talking, Mike, about the drinking every day, but with binge type drinking, and the reason why I want to talk about it is because we're talking about what is our relationship with alcohol, and oftentimes with binge type drinking, which is more like we recall the days of our college years, if we went off to college, or maybe we were, no one ever underage drank ever, right? But, binge drinking would typically be of that era, but you oftentimes see it very much in the craft beer industry. I know even at our house, like, we actually don't drink every day. If you came to our house, we have so much beer in our fridge from friends, and we're sometimes emptying our fridges out and taking them to bottle shares so that we can unload. So we actually don't really drink a whole lot, but it's really the binge drinking that becomes problematic, because people don't see that necessarily as a problem, because it's like a one-time thing or 3 or 4 times out of the year. But what is problematic about it is that with binge drinking, it has consequences too. It's not necessarily good on your body. Obviously, you could end up being very non-productive at work the next day when you have a terrible hangover because you drank too much. There's all sorts of decision making that goes along with, if you've been binge drinking, that you might engage in, that you wake up the next morning and you find yourself in a really difficult situation. So, I would say that's, binge drinking within the alcohol industry is very real. Maybe we see it at festivals. It's probably one of the things that we see it most, is the binge drinking, whether it be the consumers or even our own selves. But yeah, I think, it has to be mentioned, because if we're going to talk about our relationship with alcohol, we really need to kind of dial in, well, what type of drinking am I doing? Am I a drinking every day kind of person? Am I just binge drinking? And how is that binge drinking affecting me? So that would be sort of my commentary on that particular topic, specifically the binge drinking, is what I would mention.
Yeah, binge drinking. My drink of choice was a shot of whiskey, glass of water, no ice. So I could shoot the whiskey and I could sip the water, so no one ever saw me drink. It was very different. You never saw me with the beer in my hand. You never saw me with the cocktail in my hand, because I would shoot the whiskey and I was just walking around drinking water. I perfected not slurring my words. I perfected slowing down to where I wouldn't stumble and I wouldn't make physical mistakes to let anyone know that I was drunk. Those are really hard as people progress through this binge drinking. They can hide it really well. So an easy way to deflect that and to open that up is to start having conversations. And I think That's kind of the whole purpose, right? So, it can be hidden really well. People's demons hide real quick and real well. So that's something that needs to be talked about.
Hell yeah. Thank you all. Now I wanted to move into kind of this is a truncated version of a laundry list of stigmas that we don't only encounter in the food and beverage industry, but most of these are specific to craft beer, craft cocktail, alcohol industry specific. And I'm going to go through 3 or 4 of these, and then I'm going to pause, and I want to, kind of get your feedback on not only what I've said, but your own relationship with this particular stigma. So I'm going to go through 3 of these real quick. All right. So these are the stigmas that we are challenging by talking about the things we don't say and brewing the things we don't say and bringing the topic of mental health into the craft beer community. Number 1, the customer is always right. We cater to the customer's demands, and we traditionally forego our own needs. That's number 1. Number 2, oh, you work in alcohol? That's one big party. The best job ever. Free beer, 2 thumbs way up. If you work at Disney, can you have a bad day? Are you even allowed? Number 3, those in the craft beer industry aren't in a financial position to speak out against ownership, so they take the lumps, and those lumps accumulate. Okay, Mike, comments?
Yeah, that's I've heard it 1,000 times. Oh man, you have the best job ever, and I love what I do. I love making beer. I love the science behind it. I have been doing this for a long time, so it's kind of my career path, I guess. But do I have the best job in the world? No, I don't. This is a very hard job, and I've had some insane injuries that have happened over the last 13 years that people would be jaw dropped if they heard, the full story. Is it one big party? I to some people, yeah. Again, to me, it's my job. I don't really hang out with a lot of brewers. I've got a kid, so I go home. My wife is stay at home, so I want to make sure I get home so that she can have time not with the child. That's important. And yes, there's a lot of people that are not in the financial position to speak out against ownership. Not every owner is a jerk, but there are a lot of them out there. I keep seeing this phrase that goes around in brewer circles of 99% asshole free. That we're almost there in craft beer. We're flip that one, and you'll see that a lot of people, they don't make the money that you think they do. They're hurt physically, they're hurt emotionally. They don't feel like they can speak up to ownership because now there's all these little brewing schools, and that's a great thing. More education is great, but like now it kind of increases the likelihood that someone who costs less than you can come in and take your job if you have a problem. And again, I've never owned a brewery, so I don't know that. I've also been the person who's been like, hey, you know what? I don't like you, and so I'm out. And you sometimes have to do that for yourself. And I don't like you is me putting it in a very broadened, like non-profanity laced way. But yeah, I mean, these are all 3 real stigmas in this industry.
You're on mute, Jacqui.
Thank you. I thought I clicked the button. I will speak. I'll piggyback off the ownership stigma. My heart goes out because I definitely have heard at times or seen at times comments that are made about ownership and ownership not feeling, or employees not feeling like ownership is looking out for the best interests of their people. And that's heartbreaking. What can we do? My husband and I focus very much on looking out for our people. And I think also talking to other people within the industry, other owners and employees alike, to find out how they make their company better for their people is what we kind of strive to do. So I'm hoping that we're kind of hopefully a part of the ownership, that people are happy that they're out there seeing ownership take take sort of a lead and wanting to make things better for our people. I think that's important. I don't actually, my husband and I have a daughter. So Mike, like you know, we do a lot of sharing or whatever. And I am not usually the one that has oftentimes gone out to the events and done all of the, you know, being out there in the public. I'm usually the one at home I call it holding down the fort. So I know that my husband probably gets more of the comments of it being one big party. I'm sure it's a party at my house too with our daughter. But it's, you know, he gets you must always be, you know, having a great time, but it's a tough job, you know, you're on, you know, and we're very grateful for, you know, what we are able to do in this industry, but yes, it's one big party, but it is also work. I know it's our livelihood. It's what pays our bills. It's, you know, a huge responsibility that we've taken on. So, you know, alcohol doesn't necessarily make it more fun per se, but we definitely live, breathe, and sleep our jobs. And I guess at times, you know, we let our hair down and have one big party, but it is a demanding job, so to speak. And then as far as the customer's always right, I mean, if we're talking about beers that we're making, we definitely do look at, you know, what is the demand. But we're still gonna still appeal to our brewers and the brewing community, and you're gonna find some lagers on, and we might disrupt a little bit and put some pastry lagers out there and upset some people. But you know, I don't know if, you know, sure, the customer is always right because we're building a business, or we have a business and we, you know, want to pay the bills. But at the same time, I think it's also important that we think about what our needs are. So if you walk to the back of house, our head brewer has made some coffee that we can drink. We've made a knockoff Topo Chico. So we got some NA stuff in the back of house that we can enjoy, that we're obviously not going to put out to the customers, but it's going to meet our needs when we need to have those needs met.
We've made it pretty far through this conversation without really talking about the pandemic much. But I'll bring it up to say that the industry right now, they're hurting for employees. Breweries are hurting for employees. Restaurants are hurting for employees. If you're a brewery who has a bad mental health program, or you are that 1% asshole, or your program is just not conducive to a healthy work environment, you're going to find yourself without employees real soon. Real soon, because there are plenty of breweries out there right now who are looking after their employees, who do care, who are taking the steps to better their work environment, that the employees are going to have the choice on where they're going, and they're not going to feel stuck in a situation that they can't get out of. They're going to have somewhere to go. So if you are that person, you probably aren't listening to this podcast or this process right now, but just kind of heed that warning. If you're not keeping up, you'll be left behind.
Well said, brother. Well said. All right, I'm going to breeze through the rest of these because there's two other types of things that I want to kind of talk about. And as I go through them, if you agree, throw up the thumbs up, because I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with all these, and it'd be fun to kind of watch just your thumbs go up and down. All right, number one, the vocal minority has pushed craft brewing into the space of disposable commodity of candy beers and soda seltzers. How much does that impact a brewer's integrity? Following trends, how does that make you feel as a brewer? What's the hype train like? Can you be relevant if you don't ride the hype train? Brewers care about the quality of their product, not necessarily the quality of their life. You are not your job versus you are not your feelings versus seeing another brewery get a reshare from a large publication and thinking that I'm not doing enough. Not being able to put your phone down. The masculine association with craft beer means another beer is the solution to all of life's problems, and that's simply not true. The craft beer culture supports this binge type of drinking, and it normalizes it in an unhealthy way. I will tell you that one of the more specific interactions that I've had with a brewery co-owner who told me that the conversation that we're starting with this particular beer project is one that if he didn't have it soon, probably would have led him to leave the industry. This bro type of mentality where, oh, we'll call him because he works at a brewery, he's going to bring free beer. That idea that everybody is constantly consuming is totally false. I don't know how many times I've walked into a brewery on brew day and people are drinking their protein shakes or their fruit smoothies and whatnot. And we can go through an entire brew day without even actually approaching the tap room because number one, we're doing a job and we're having good conversations. But number two, the conversation doesn't have to always include alcohol. When we talk about these types of stigmas, and we have this conversation in our education with Hope for the Day, when we talk about stigmas, we realize that they're different for everyone in every type of intersection, whether that means that I'm a white, privileged as hell, cisgender, heterosexual male with a beautiful wife and 3 crazy kids, and I work in compounding pharmacy and craft beer and mental health, and for 21 more days, local elected official stuff. I know that I cross a whole bunch of intersections, and I have my own stigmas related to all of those specific interactions. It's not my job to make someone else feel any smaller or to pile on with what they're dealing with. But if I'm not aware of my own default potential to stigmatize people and or myself, I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm not going to grow. So I wanted to kind of go through that list of stigmas. Jacqui, you came off mute. Did you want to comment on any of those before we move on?
No, I came off mute so that I didn't.
Didn't forget. It's so 2020. You're on mute.
It's like 5 o'clock. I've been up since 4.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go through just a quick list of the things that can impact your mental health when you work in the alcohol industry. These are all things that Mike and I have kind of gathered, and then I've added a few things that I know just from simply doing a lot of these educations that I was referring to with Hope for the Day. Number one, physical injury. I know Mike has put together with duct tape and Band-Aids at this point. Interpersonal issues at work, whether one of your coworkers or somebody that works underneath you or your owners, interpersonal relationships or interpersonal issues in relationships can absolutely impact your mental health negatively. Family problems, financial concerns, working for tips sucks. If you can't afford to pay your bills, but you're consistently working at a brewery on salary for 60, 70, 80 hours a week, how are you ever going to get anywhere? Because you're going to constantly be burnt out. Overconsumption, it's in all caps. That must mean it's important. Feeling undervalued, that goes back to this financial concern with, all right, I'm working salary. I'm only actually making about 45 G's a year, but my expenses are closer to 60. How is this sustainable? Social issues and the lack of the freedom to advocate for social justice. I know that the previous beer collaboration projects like Black is Beautiful and Resilience were focusing on ills that we think that as a community we can kind of focus on, shine a light on, and see what we can do about it. When we started talking about the Craft Beer for Mental Health project, I will tell you that the disagreement on the why became very, very vocal, not only in my inner circles of, friends, but I had to actually contact professionals to say, am I crazy for thinking that this is a good idea? Jacqui being one of them, Tom being the 4th or 5th person that I talked to about this, saying, is this stupid? And then Mike, we had a conversation on this very platform with Andrew Copland from Craft Beer Professionals, who, if you haven't told him today that you love him, please remind him that he is a gem and an amazing human being for putting all this stuff on. But knowing that this conversation might not have gotten out of the actual doc because I felt a large amount of trepidation talking about mental health and alcohol. But I will tell you that where Jacqui lives in Florida, I know that they lost 4 people to suicide in 2020. And that pisses me off. Because maybe if we had talked about some things, maybe if we wouldn't have been afraid to say the things that we don't say, maybe those people might still be around. So we think that by starting the conversation and initiating, sometimes talking about the stuff that sucks and being okay with being vulnerable. I know that my friend Mike here, we're going to continue to share the work that he's doing simply because he's a badass. But what he's about to share in the next few days from Tin Whiskers will inspire the hell out of you, and it will make you realize that the conversation does not have to be coming from a therapist or a counselor. We do have Jacqui, so we're cool there, but you can actually talk about your mental health because you have permission. The things we don't say is intended to funnel people into the education that Hope of the Day provides, because we know that we're not therapists, we're not counselors. We're individual people who have had our own interactions with not only mental health issues, but with people that we have lost to suicide. And rather than sitting there and letting it continue, we give a shit, we're going to move forward. Damn it, I cussed. Okay, sorry, that's $3 right there. I did twice, so I think you're okay. Tom said asshole. Damn it, that's fuck. All right, I'm gonna stop before I get any further. All right, so dealing with the stress of interacting with narrow-minded attitudes of people who think that they know better has become something that has, over the last few weeks, been a very, very specific thing that has impacted my mental health and my ability to get good sleep. When my first conversation with Jacqui was, hey, have you read any of these comments? And she's like, no, because Jacqui's approach is obviously different than ours. As white, heterosexual, cisgendered men, we have this idea where we default to having to respond to everyone. And I know this is something that Mike and I have a really hard time with. I know Tom is way farther along on his journey of being able to deal with these people. I refer to them as Hannahs because they're howling at us. But Jacqui says two specific things, and she put them in an email to me, or she said them into my ears, and I put them in an email back to her saying that these two sentences changed everything for this entire project from my perspective. I'm going to read those two things first, and then I want to talk about changing priorities because we got about 5 minutes left. All right. These are the two sentences that Jacqui said to me out of her mouth hole into my ear hole. Number one, you don't affect change without ruffling some feathers along the way. Thank you for saying that. Whew. Number two, be compassionate and understanding towards those that aren't on their journey yet. We're all operating at different frequencies and paces, and that is okay. So thank you for saying those two things, Jacqui, because holy balls, I really wanted to snap on a few of these people who assume that the only reason that craft beer exists is to sell more alcohol. Yeah, absolutely. They want to be employed tomorrow. But the idea that you can't do something with your platform is an antiquated approach to simply putting things in black and white. I'm sorry, things are not in black and white anymore. If you don't want to drink, you don't have to. And that's a freedom that we want you to kind of take advantage of. But what I wanted to do before we close out is I want to talk about this one sentence that says hospitality starts with taking care of yourself. So I know that I'm not the only person on the planet who does things intentionally to get the hell away from my cell phone. I know that I have changed the time when I stop receiving notifications to 6:45 p.m. I'm on the Central Time Zone, if that means anything to you. I have recently moved that to 5:45 p.m. I'm realizing the outside world is incredibly heavy, and it's stressing me the hell out. And when I get yelled at for doing something with people that I love and I respect, like the craft beer industry, with the idea that my intent is either ill-informed or short-sighted, or when people start using the frickin' term gaslighting, I get a little heated. So because I don't have Jacqui on speed dial, which, by the way, I do need your phone number just so I can put you on speed dial, because your voice, just like Tom's, totally calms me down. But knowing that I can't spend all of my time defending things, all I can continue to do is to remain inspired by my friends that are on this call to make sure that we continue the conversation about mental health in craft beer. So hospitality starts with taking care of yourself. As we close, would you three please start the sentence with hospitality starts with taking care of yourself, and tell me how you're taking care of yourself.
I'll start. Hospitality starts with taking care of yourself. And recently I deleted like most of my social media platforms, except for my company Instagram account. And got away from Twitter, got away from Facebook, and realized how much of a time suck that was. And now I have all this time to hang out with my wife and my kid because I'm not staring at my phone. And I'm not reading things that are just like, again, the outside world is heavy, and those things just bring you the outside world and shove it down your throat. That was one of the biggest, I think, over the last year self-care things I could have done is just get rid of it.
Yay. I did that. I got rid of Facebook in September of last year. I couldn't take all of the social media, so I did keep one, and that was really, really helpful for me. And then earlier this year, I was able to get my COVID vaccination, and I feel a lot more comfortable at the gym. And so I put it in my calendar, and I get there before everyone wakes up in my house so I can get it in and get it done. And it just really helps with my anxiety, just starting the day out with a little bit of me time and kind of getting the endorphins going. So
I'm not doing it. I am overeating. I'm not working out. I'm staring at my phone too much. I'm on social media too much. I'm not hanging out with my friends as often as I should, even though I'm fully vaccinated. I'm feeling this angst and weight that I don't know how to release, even though I do, because if I exercise, put the phone down, eat right, did all these things I'm supposed to be doing, I'd feel better, but there's something in my brain that's stopping me from doing those things. So I guess what I'm doing right now is having that conversation and saying, hey, these are things I'm not doing that I know I should be doing. Help me. Can someone just go for a walk with me, ride a bike? Can we go do something like, I could use some assistance right now, in this process because I'm not doing it on my own. It's not working. That's taking care of yourself. When you talk about, WellBeing, right? That's the name of my company. what does the well-being look like for each individual person? For me right now, it is figuring out how to kick the tires and get this process of me getting away from this pandemic life and kind of stepping back out into the world and what that looks like and how I'm going to do that without beating myself up. I didn't say that I was mad at myself for not doing all these things. I'm frustrated with myself, that's for sure. But I'm not blaming myself for it, but I'm trying to find a way to make that better. That is taking care of yourself while not taking care of yourself, you know? So that's kind of where I'm at right now, for sure.
Hell yeah. And the cool thing about what you just said, even though it could potentially be described as you negatively describing something about yourself, you're holding yourself accountable. You don't have to only sing your own praises. But then that also brings up the point of negative self-talk, which is something that I have been it's been baked into my DNA. I tend to blame Joel before anything else. And it's difficult sometimes to go, wow, I am having a shit day. I'm going to cancel things for the rest of the day. Today, I had a podcast scheduled for this evening. And because of the weight of the world around me, I actually emailed my friend Zach and said, I can't do it today. And he was like, cool. That's what friends do. That's what the people that you want to surround yourself with are the people that say, that's cool, we can do it next week. Because I'm not trying to run from something. I just really want to do the things that make me feel more like me. And right now it's eating dinner with the fam. I will no longer be an elected official in 22 days from now. So that means I get to eat dinner at home on Tuesdays, which is a first for me. So I'm trying to advocate for myself as much as possible, which is difficult when you feel like, how do I change the world if I only work 9 to 5? Well, I'll tell you, I'm now learning how to work during my dreams, which is one of the reasons why whenever I read something that I've written, it comes out in Tom's voice, because Tom's voice is freaking dope. And then every time I think about how do I approach being vulnerable in an industry that A, I don't brew beer, B, I don't work for any beer companies, and C, I don't make money on beer. How do I consider myself part of the industry? Well, I'm a super fanboy. I try to buy as much as I can from as many breweries as possible, one can, and I split them with my friends. I've got a group of besties in my neighborhood. They're part of my bubble, and that's what we do. Even the guy that doesn't drink beer because all he drinks is vodka and Diet Mountain Dew. Hi, Kelly. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm holding myself accountable. I'm being aware of the people that I'm interacting with, have their own shit going on. I don't need to pile on. And I will leave you with the one thing that I'm working on outside of making sure that I rub my wife's feet at least once a day. Not only because the lotion smells really good and it's got a cute name. It's called Heel Genius. I mean, come on. That's just brilliant marketing. If you've never seen Real Genius with Val Kilmer, you should buy that on Amazon. But in addition to rubbing my wife's feet, which is not my fetish, but it totally could be. In addition to doing that, I'm trying to be more honest with the fact that conversations don't have to be complicated and heavy to be valuable. I can talk small talk with any of you for hours about absolutely nothing. And maybe one thing that takes 10, 15 seconds could be the bomb that I needed to drop, could be the thing that actually lifted this weight off of my freaking chest. It does not have to be complicated. Jacqui and her profession as a psychotherapist is incredibly, incredibly necessary on this planet. But we don't always have to default to going all the way up the chain to a doctor. We should be able to understand how to be supportive with our friends and let them experience the things that they're experiencing. When somebody tells you something that sucks, all you really have to do in response is, man, that sucks. Validation goes a fucking long way. So if you understand that, not judging the position that somebody's in, and Jacqui's helped me understand this too, because when she tells me that I should be compassionate and understanding when people are dropping F-bombs and trying to put my personal information on the internet to make me afraid to talk about mental health and craft beer, I'm trying to be compassionate. I'm going to hold myself accountable by talking to these 3 people when I'm at my wit's end. And I was at my wit's end earlier, and I talked to Mike about it, and I feel a little bit better. But advocating for the people that are in your industry doesn't have to just be you brewing a beer. We know that there are a whole bunch of breweries that don't have the capacity to get involved. Cool. Doesn't bother me at all. Let me know what your address is. I'll send you some wristies and some resource cards, because I know that this simple declaration over your urinal or on the back of your freaking stall doors, and giving people access to a QR code to actually find mental health resources in their local area, that's far more important than you brewing a beer and throwing dollars hope for the day's way. Yes, I would like my my organization to continue, because I know the education means something, but the conversation is what's going to save the day. So I would much rather y'all get involved in the conversation by talking about it than you actually worrying about, the financial implications of brewing a beer that, might not sell. Not worried about that in the slightest. Eyes, ears, and mouths are far more important than dollars and cents as it stands right now with this project. I'm super freaking pumped up to not only get to hear about everybody's reasons why they give a shit as far as the project's concerned, but over the next few weeks, the 3 people on this call, besides the bald guy that's been talking for the last 5 minutes, the 3 people on this call will be dropping versions of things we don't say. Tom's will look vastly different because we don't feel it's responsible to match the vibe of the design that's over my shoulder with the red. So Liquid Rain, the non-alcoholic IPA with WellBeing Brewing and Four Hands out of St. Louis, will be available soon. I think you said it's coming. The labels come next week, right?
Labels will be here next week. Beer will be ready when the beer's ready.
The beer will be ready when the beer is ready. Baby's in the oven. So all of these things are about to happen. And I encourage anybody who doesn't understand the project or who thinks that we're talking out of our asses, please, let's talk about this, because I know that we're not going to get anywhere by continually throwing out the all caps, I am a keyboard warrior type bullshit. I would like people to be involved in the conversation. I'm going to do my best not to snap back when people attempt to, bully not only the people that are helping out with social media, but the people who are making comments about how they're inspired by something. We don't have to talk down to people when their opinions differ from us. As long as they're not messing with your money or pissing on the side of your building or hitting you in the throat, we should be able to allow them to exist. So that ties into the stigma conversation and how most people look at mental health as if it's a freaking competition. Mental health is not a competition. It is not a pain Olympics. It's not the grand pissing match. You can be upset about the loss of someone to COVID, and someone can be upset about the hole in their sock. Both of those things are valid. I would just recommend that you kind of choose your audience before you share the hole in your sock with the guy who just lost a family member to COVID. So understanding that both things can coexist, but we do not have to put people on pedestals and their problems on pedestals to give them more attention or whatever. We can certainly freaking coexist. And the bottom line is it's okay not to be okay. Some days suck ass, some days are fucking awesome. But we're very thankful that you all tuned in and joined us. And I'm really glad I stopped that whole don't cuss thing, because that's bullshit. I'm sorry, I'm a potty mouth. I was born on a semi-truck and I will die on a semi-truck. I love all of you. Now, as we exit, we're going to go backwards. Tom, you go, then Jacqui, then Mike, and then I'll say goodbye. But please remind people who you are, where they can get a hold of you, and then say toodaloo.
Yeah, Tom Halaska at wellbeingbrewing.com. You can order our beers and have them shipped right to your door. Mix them into your session. You drink alcohol, you don't drink alcohol. It doesn't matter if beer tastes good. If people didn't like the taste of beer, beer wouldn't taste like beer. So, thank you for having me.
Jacqui Garman, you can reach me at Jacqui at hiddenspringsaleworks.com. And we can't ship out of Florida, but you can always come to Tampa when you feel comfortable and COVID is hopefully in the past, and visit us here in the Tampa Bay area.
Mike Willaford, Tin Whiskers Brewing Company. It's Mike at twbrewing.com or Tin Whiskers Brewer on Instagram. We also can't ship, but we sell our beer over the greater Minnesota area. So things we don't say actually shipped this week for the most part. So, and we'll be out in our tap room this week. But thank you for having me today.
Rock and roll. And my name is Joel. My contact information is joel@hftd.org. If you'd like more information about the Things We Don't Say IPA project that was spearheaded by Eagle Park Brewing, Malt Europe Malting Company, and Hollingberry and Sons Hop Company, in addition to Ego Proof and Hop Smash, please visit thingswedon'tsay.beer, or you can visit hftd.org and on the bottom click on Things We Don't Say IPA. Either way, we're thankful that you guys were around. Once again, thank you to Andrew for putting together the CBP conferences. I've never met someone like that dude. I'm jealous of his hair, but I also think that we should do a better job of reminding him how freaking incredible he is as a person for being so freaking organized. I strive to be more like Andrew and like Jacqui and like Mike and like Tom every freaking day. So thank you all for joining us. If you ever need anything from me, you know where to find me, joel@hftd.org. At Hope for the Day is our social. And then we also have the Instagram handle at Craft Beer for Mental Health. That does not mean that the beer is good for your mental health. It means that we should be talking about mental health in craft beer. All right, y'all. Love you.
Bye.
Pieces.